Cain Marko is the son of Dr. Kurt Marko, who was an atomic researcher, and Marjorie Marko. Cain's parents separated and his mother died when he was 3 years old. Cain was eventually sent to boarding schools, from which he continued to be expelled. Dr. Marko's colleague, Brian Xavier, died in an accident and Marko married his widow, Sharon Xavier, to keep his wealth. Cain and his father moved into the Westchester mansion that would later become the X-Men headquarters. Kurt began to pay more attention to his stepson Charles than his own son, leading Cain to bully his new brother and hit him at every opportunity. At the age of 10, Charles awakened his telepathic powers by forming a connection with his stepbrother. Cain noticed this and discovered his brother's mutant powers, but above all, he felt deep shame that Charles saw all the pain and suffering his father caused him. Sharon died soon after, heartbroken, leaving Charles to live with his abusive stepfather and stepbrother. During an argument in Dr. Marko's private laboratory over money, Cain accused him of having something to do with the death of Charles's father. Unbeknownst to both of them, young Xavier was listening to their conversation. During the ensuing argument, Cain accidentally caused a fire. Luckily, Dr. Marko managed to save both boys before perishing in the fire. With his last breath, the doctor apologized to Charles for not being able to save his father and suggested that he keep his powers a secret. Cain continued to live in the Xavier mansion, increasingly resentful of his stepbrother's academic and athletic achievements, as well as his telepathic powers. Finally, the boy decided to leave home to travel the world. He became a mercenary and was locked up in a third-world prison after becoming involved in a civil war. Marko and Xavier later found themselves serving together in the same American military unit in Korea. Marko deserted and his brother went after him to take him back. They both arrived at a cave that housed the lost temple of Cyttorak, a powerful deity. Marko impulsively picked up the bright ruby lying there. As Xavier watched, the mystical power of the gem transformed Marko into the Juggernaut, a very large, physically superior, and virtually unstoppable superhuman being. At that time, an enemy bombardment with explosives caused a collapse and Marko was buried under several thousand tons of rock. Xavier survived and returned to his unit. Because he did not need air or food to survive, Marko eventually broke free with his newfound immense strength and invulnerability. He then faced Jin-Taeko, the man who became Juggernaut before him. He killed the man and under the influence of Cyttorak, massacred the entire village. After many years, Marko headed to the United States to use his new power to kill Xavier, leaving the gem in Korea. As Juggernaut, Cain had given his soul to the deity Cyttorak, becoming his human avatar. Marko attacked Charles in the mansion and discovered that Charles was the leader of the X-Men. The professor tried to stop him with his powers, but discovered that the helmet Cyttorak gave him protected him from psychic attacks. The X-Men were unable to stop him, until Professor Xavier called for the help of the Human Torch, who burned off the rivets on Cain's helmet, allowing the X-Men to remove it. After Professor Xavier sent Cain into a coma, he locked him in a room in the mansion's basement. While attempting to remove Cain's mystical powers, Professor Xavier placed the two in a device and due to the intervention of Factor 3, Cain was revived and temporarily retained Professor X's telepathic powers. After defeating the X-Men, Cain was contacted by Factor 3 to be a member. While attempting to join them, Juggernaut was tricked by the X-Men, who banished him to the Crimson Cosmos, the realm of the Crimson Gem of Cyttorak. While trying to find a way back to Earth, Cain headed to the Dream Dimension and helped drive Strange Fight Nightmare to rescue Eternity, a cosmic entity. After successfully rescuing Eternity, Cain attempted to destroy it and was banished back to the Crimson Cosmos. During a conflict with the Hulk, Dr. Peter Corbiot sent the Green Goliath to the Crimson Dimension. Bringing him back, Juggernaut managed to escape and both giants clashed. The fight ended when the X-Men arrived at the scene and subdued Juggernaut. Juggernaut was later freed and hired to kill the X-Men by Eric the Red. During the conflict, Cain met and faced Colossus for the first time. He proved capable of taking on the X-Men on his own. Later, Cain appeared in New York to kidnap Madame Web and use her powers to defeat the X-Men, but Spider-Man managed to stop him. Sometime later, Kane was seen in a New York bank conducting a legitimate business transaction, but was attacked by Nimrod. This time, Kane was helped by the X-Men, although it seemed to the public that the X-Men were helping a criminal. During a robbery on Muir Island, Kane met Dazzler, the famous singer of whom he was a fan. The mutant had recently joined the X-Men and wanted to show her worth by stopping Juggernaut, but he refused to fight her and even offered to pay for the damages from an accident they had. Over time, Kane fused with the Crimson Gem, so he no longer needed his suit to maximize his powers, except for his helmet, which protected him from the psychic attacks of his brother, Psylocke and Jean Grey. In addition to the aforementioned heroes, Juggernaut has faced other heroes and villains such as Captain America, Thor, Captain Britain, Excalibur, Spider-Woman, Doctor Strange, Venom, and the Avengers. When Professor, he tore the Crimson Gem from Juggernaut's body and imprisoned him within it. Inside the jewel, Kane learned that he was an avatar of Cyttorak. As such, the otherworldly entity sought to assume control of Juggernaut's form. But Kane, through sheer force of will, destroyed the evil god and returned to Earth, stronger than ever, but unable to fully control his amplified abilities. Cyttorak was simply one of a pantheon of 8 gods, all with earthly avatars. These beings attempted to use Juggernaut to build a machine that would enslave the human race. With the help of Charles, Kane managed to confront and defeat Cyttorak. After this, he destroyed the machine and then faced and defeated each of the other avatars of the gods. Not long after, Kane heard of a second gem of Cyttorak. His quest for power led him to a temple, where the Cheho-Du cult set a trap for him, stripping him of his power. When his powers were restored, an interdimensional spirit named Trion possessed Juggernaut and raised his powers to the point of being able to break the barriers separating dimensions. Using his new ability to traverse dimensions, the Juggernaut controlled by Trion made his way to the spirit's home dimension, where he gained even more power. By the time Wolverine, Nightcrawler, and Shadowcat found Juggernaut, his powers had expanded beyond mere strength. It grew to be over 100 feet tall, and each of its blows was capable of shattering reality itself. There came a point where Juggernaut no longer even recognized the X-Men as threats. Professor, there, they found the real Kane, who had been reduced to a weak, crying being. With the help of the X-Men, Kane was able to re-establish his connection to Juggernaut's power and return to his normal form. He defeated the presence that possessed him and finally destroyed it with his own hands. This completely freed Juggernaut from the spirit's influence, costing him his enhanced reality-altering powers, but he regained self-control. Juggernaut was recruited alongside Iceman, Jean Grey, Mystique and Toad to save the human race from a threat from the future. During this mission, Kane realized that, despite his enormous physical strength, he lacked character. He also gained a new appreciation for life and came to understand the plight of mutants. After a battle with Cyttorak, Kane lost most of Juggernaut's powers. Thereafter, Kane reconciled with Xavier and joined the X-Men. In an unusual turn for someone with Kane's personality, he immediately befriended several people in the mansion. Kane later allowed himself to be detained and then had a one-night stand with She-Hulk, who, as Jennifer Walters, represented him at his trial for all the crimes he had committed in his life. Surprisingly, Kane was exonerated of all his crimes and allowed to walk free. Later, Black Tom Cassidy resurfaced, and Juggernaut joined his new Brotherhood of Mutants, intending to betray the group and warn the X-Men when he had the chance. He also faced Mojo and joined the new Excalibur lineup after House of M. At that time, the Illuminati decided to banish the Hulk to another planet where he would not cause harm. When the Emerald Goliath returned, he was determined to get revenge on the Illuminati. Charles Xavier was one of his main targets. Kane tried to protect his brother along with several X-Men, but they were easily defeated. Without much choice, Kane agreed to become Cyttorak's avatar again to regain the Juggernaut's full power. Upon recovering them, he challenged the Hulk, but the battle remained inconclusive. Soon after, Kane rejected all of Xavier's attempts to thank him. Before leaving, he warned Xavier not to send anyone to try to find him. Kane later faced Scar, the Hulk's son, in a fight, eventually being defeated and launched into orbit. For a brief period of time, Kane took over the Enigma Force and became Captain Universe, a cosmic entity of considerable power. With this power he managed to restore the tectonic plates beneath New York, thus saving the city. When the Serpent, Odin's older brother, awoke from his slumber, he summoned 7 magical hammers. Juggernaut was corrupted by the power of one of those hammers and became Kurth, Stonebreaker. This being was so strong that he managed to defeat all the X-Men easily. During the final battle between the Avengers and the Worthy, Kurth was defeated by Wolverine using armor made of Uru, the same metal as Thor's hammer. Due to his participation in the Serpent's attack, Kane was imprisoned once again. From here on, Juggernaut returned to being a villain and made sporadic appearances in various titles facing Thor and the X-Men. Joseph posed as Magneto and recruited Marco into a new brotherhood of evil mutants. Discovering the deception, Kane turned on him and confessed to Cyclops that he wanted to be an X-Men again. Juggernaut went on to undertake a series of missions to help Cyclops tie up loose ends as part of the X-Men's final mission. During his subsequent adventures, he became trapped in Limbo and his gem was destroyed. Trapped in Limbo, a helpless Kane dragged his armor as he tried to find a way out. He was finally able to leave Limbo and was hospitalized. Charles went to visit him and they both talked about Krakoa. Kane wanted to be part of the mutant nation, but his brother refused to give him a membership. When he fully recovered, Kane sought to regain his powers. Marco obtained the Crimson Bands of Sidorak and the remains of the Crimson Gem to restore his powers, but swore he would never serve any deity again. Juggernaut got a job at Damage Control where he faced the immortal Hulk and again, the fight ended without a clear winner because Kane received help to stop his rival. Juggernaut was eventually granted citizenship on Krakoa after the Silent Council put it to a vote. In exchange, they forced him to join Nightcrawler's Legionnaires. He believed this was all Xavier's design, but Nightcrawler revealed to him that his brother had voted against him and it was he who had drawn up this agreement. After months of working in the service of Krakoa, Marvel Girl would nominate Kane as a member of the new version of the X-Men. Juggernaut was chosen as a member, but before making the official announcement, Krakoa was attacked by the anti-mutant group Orcus. Juggernaut was captured along with Cyclops, but both were saved by the other X-Men. Kane managed to rescue the Krakoan entity that Orcus had captured, but was defeated by the group's adamantium weapons. Juggernaut is one of the most iconic mutant villains and it may be somewhat surprising that today he is one of the members of the X-Men. With the new era of mutants on the horizon, we can only see what the future holds for this new heroic version of the unstoppable Juggernaut.